Now that we have a really good understanding of what Node packages are and how NPM, the Node Package Manager, is a utility that allows us to use third-party packages from the community, we're going to go ahead and see how we might use Node Package Manager, so NPM, in a project on our Windows computer. Let's go ahead and start out by opening up a browser, and then let's go ahead and look up NPM. Open it up, and then when we were learning about NPM, we saw a package called Mongoose, which is a data access layer or document object system for Mongo databases. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to see how we might use it inside of an application here. We're not going to go deep into actually using the library, but we're going to show how we can use NPM in order to import a third-party package into our application. We'll do that right after we learn how to use NPM to create an application that is managed by NPM and provides us the ability to pull in third-party packages like this. We're going to start off by opening up a command prompt. So we'll do cmd, and we'll open up a command prompt. Now, based on how you like to organize your computer files when you're developing, you may have a development folder in here, but for these demos, we've been doing everything in the documents folder. So I am going to change directory to the documents folder, and then we're going to go ahead and see what we've got in there. Yes, here's my first app.js from an earlier screencast that we did. And what I want to do is open up Windows Explorer. I'm going to go to my documents folder. Here's my first app. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. And in this folder, I'm going to say my first package. So now when we do our dir to list what's inside of our folder here, we're going to go ahead and change directory to my first cd, my first, and what did we call it? We called it my first package. So my first package. Oh, can't find it in the path. So let's go back here really quick. Oh, it's because we're in the shortcut documents. So that just, when it comes to Windows on that, that's kind of irritating that this documents is not quite the same as the documents folder for your user. Now it pulls in those folders and gives you kind of links to them inside of the shortcut folder. But the one that we're actually trying to execute our code in lives in the C drive, users, Tim, and then this documents folder. You can see it just has my first app, which you can see here. That's the only file inside of the documents folder. So let's go ahead and paste our package folder in there. And now when we do a dir to list the contents, you'll see now our folder is there, my first package. So now we can actually change directory to my first package, hit enter, and now we are in that folder. Now NPM, when we're going to set up an application or start developing an application in Node, we can use NPM within our application folder to manage the metadata about our application, as well as pull in and list all of the packages on which our application depends. In other words, we can list all of the third-party packages that we got through NPM from a third party that we need to have loaded in the application for it to run correctly. To set up our application, we use Npm Init. So that's INIT. Now we just got an error here. It says NPM is not recognized as an internal or external command. Now you may run into this, and usually what this implies is that you don't have Node installed, because npm gets installed automatically when you install Node. Now, being that we know we installed Node on this machine, it's most likely because our Node version switcher, we haven't turned on a particular node. And you can tell we haven't because we don't have current next to either of these, which means there is no node attached to this command prompt for us to use. So we're going to go ahead and pick the 12.11.1, which is the most current version. Hit enter. Now when we do node -v, we should see that we've got a 12.11.1. And now when we go ahead and execute the npm init, we shouldn't get yelled at. npm will begin, and it's going to set up a package.json file inside of that folder that we are in, which is, of course, if you look at your path right here, we're in c/user/tim/documents, and then we are inside of the my first package folder. And here it's walking through a step-by-step setup script that asks us what we want to name our package. So I'm going to leave it as the name of the folder, which is the default. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter on that. It is the first version of this package or our application, so I'm going to leave it as 1.0. There's a description, so we can add a description. This is my really cool first Node application. Go ahead and hit enter on that. The entry point. Now remember, in the videos, I've identified multiple times that index.js is the default entry point for any application that you write in Node or any package that you create in Node. Now you can change the name of that file to anything you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as the default. You can set up test commands. We're not going to worry about that right now. And then a git repository. We don't have one of those yet. Keywords. We could put down tutorial because that's what this is. And then the author, Tim Clark, but you guys could use your name. A license, we're not going to worry about licenses right now. We hit enter. Now, it is going to create this package.json file inside of the folder that we created for our application. All of our application files will live inside of this folder. And the package.json is the file that holds all of this metadata about our package or application. And it is also where it will keep a list of all of the third-party packages that we end up pulling into our application for use within our code. It's asking us if we're cool with everything in here. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it at yes and hit enter. Now we're back to the command prompt with my first package. If I do a dir to list the contents, the only file we see in there is the package.json. We can verify that by looking inside of my first app, and we have here a package file right there. Now with Visual Studio Code, make sure you have that installed if you don't. With Visual Studio Code, we can go ahead and open up that application folder. So let's go to Documents, and again it's under our C, Users, Tim, Documents. Of course, the username will be your username, not Tim. Click on my first package, select that folder, and now it opens up in Visual Studio Code, and you can see your package.json right here. So let's go ahead and let's make this bigger so that we can see it. I don't want to magnify with the magnifier. I want to go ahead and let's do File, Preferences, Settings, Text Editor, Font. Let's go ahead and set the font size to like 24 so that it's really big so we can see it better. Hit enter, close settings, open our package.json, and here we are. Now everything that was generated when we went through that npm interactive guide to set up our application is now inside of this package.json. So in all reality, we now have our application set up to become a package in npm if we wanted it to be. Now, right now we're not worried about how do we create a full-blown redistributable package that we can put up through NPM. That's an advanced topic that we'll get to another time. But what we are focusing on right now is adding a third-party package for use within our application. And when we were learning about NPM, we found Mongoose. And so we're just going to go ahead and install Mongoose. It's really easy to add a third-party package to your software by simply using npm install and then the name of the package. You can see it right here in this image that we just use npm install and then the word Mongoose. So let's go back to our command prompt, and we are in our programs or our packages folder, root folder, and then we're going to say npm install Mongoose and hit enter. Now what's going to happen is npm is going to go back. It's going to extend itself out to the npm services on the internet. It's going to look for this package. It's going to find everything it needs, and then it is going to download and install the package inside of our application. So if we come back to Visual Studio Code and we look at this, we now have this node_modules folder. Well, the node_modules folder is where Node puts all of the third-party packages that we are including in our application. And if we look at this in our package.json, we will see a new section was added to our JSON file, and it talks about dependencies. In other words, all of the third-party packages that our software depends on in order to run. And the only one we've added is Mongoose, and it has the version of that package that we are going to be using in our software. So here's where it lists all the dependencies that our software has. And then if we open up the node modules folder, we will be able to see that Mongoose, the library that we wanted, is in here. And the funny thing is that if we go into Mongoose and we look at its package.json, we can see based on its dependencies right here that it itself has a whole lot of dependencies on other third-party libraries made by other people. Well, it needs all of these packages for it to run so that we can use it. And you'll see that when Mongoose was installed, so were all of its dependencies. You can see bson over here. You can see the Kareem. You can see the MongoDB adapter. You can also see mpath, mquery, ms, regex, safe buffer. And as you can see, there are some other ones in this list that aren't listed here, which means one of these packages may also have dependencies that were added. So what happens is that when we install a package in Node inside of our application, Node will look at our JSON. It will install this one inside of Node modules. It will then look inside of that one and look at its Node modules package, and it will install all of its dependencies. And after it installs all of its dependencies, it will then look at those dependencies package.json and see what dependencies it may have. And if it has dependencies, it doesn't look like this one does. But if the other ones have dependencies in their package.json, it will then install the dependencies that they have. See, this one has ms as its dependency. So when it installs ms, it'll go to ms, look at its package.json, and it will look to see if it has any dependencies. And it only has dev dependencies, but not production dependencies. So that's how the Node Package Manager works, and that's how we include third-party packages into our application. We're really only concerned about our dependencies, and we allow Node and NPM to deal with our dependency plus all of its dependencies plus all of those dependencies. And you can see how it becomes a tree of dependencies within this Node modules folder. We never edit anything inside of this Node modules folder. It is 100% there to be managed by NPM. We don't touch it. Now, we can go ahead and add ourselves an index.js file, which is what we said the entry point to our application is inside of our JSON file. You can see right here the main file that runs our application is going to be index.js. We've got our index.js here. Well, following the same pattern for modules that we used when we were creating individual files within our project and we were including those modules, we actually can include packages into our code the exact same way that we include file modules into our code. And we can do that simply with the require. So I can do const mongoose equals require. And then instead of doing a relative path like this, you can see that we can actually just use the name. See, Mongoose pops up because it's a dependency inside of our node modules folder. So we just call it by name. We do not put a // in front of it. The / implies that this is a file local to our project. Mongoose isn't. Mongoose is a module. And so when we do this, Node knows that when it runs into this, it should look inside of the node modules folder for this module. And then we can actually use anything that this Mongoose package provides for us. And we can see when we do the dot, we can go through, and as we learn about Mongoose, we can begin to use its various features that are provided by it just by calling on the Mongoose object. So that is simply requiring a third-party module and then requiring it into our code. So adding it as a dependency to our project and then requiring it into our code. NPM, super valuable when it comes to getting third-party code in order to help us implement what we're trying to implement, and extremely important to understand when we are setting up our Node application so that we then have a well-formed Node package that can be easily executed by Node, and it has all the metadata and all the stuff about our application.